Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights, the podcast that shows you how winning is done. I am John Mills here in the final house of the House of Stallone, where we are exploring his work with the Rocky films as director. And I am pleased as punch, see what I did there, to be joined by my buddies Darren Moser and Tristan Riddell as we look at Rocky Balboa, the sixth and kind of final Rocky movie, but we'll save that discussion for later. And we are here discussing Rocky Balboa. This is the movie that came out that was in many regards an apology for what happened in Rocky V after Stallone finally said, yeah, maybe it wasn't the best thing. Darren, welcome back to the ring for one final go-around here in the modern era where Rocky steps back in and Stallone sits back in the director's chair, I guess. You don't stand in that. Are you ready to go the distance with Mason Dixon?
I am. This was, again, as all of these movies for Rocky Balboa is the first time seeing it, so I'm excited to discuss it. It's been quite an education in boxing.
Excellent. And Tristan, I know you're back in the ring. You're ready to throw just those pain bombs on this conversation. What do you bring into the ring this time? You ready to get a sweat on and step out of that cushy restaurant job that you have? Yeah, yes. So, okay, look, we're all excited to talk about Rocky Balboa. I'm thrilled to talk about Rocky Balboa. In all honesty, when we agreed to talk about this is the one I was most excited to talk about. I actually have a speech from this film pinned on my Twitter profile, and it has been for years and years. It's just what I put up there. And
Paulie's speech, right? That's the big speech.
Yes,
right?
It is. It's
okay.
Paul. That is the spoiler. It's Paulie's speech when he talks about how he wasn't good to Adrian. That is the speech that I have up there.
It's like 3 lines.
When he talked about how he wasn't an Indian.
Yes. Well, I can tell you that Rocky Balboa, as we all know, there's an extended period of time between Rocky films. Stallone directs Rocky IV, and then Avildsen comes back for Rocky V, and it basically ends the franchise. And everybody considers...
In a nail in the coffin kind of way is what I'm getting.
Oh,
not in a good way.
Very much so. Everybody saying after the warm reception of 4, after the iconic status we talked about last time, everybody was ready to cheer for Rocky again. Rocky V happens, and everybody said, maybe we've been going at this long enough. Maybe it's time to move on. That's how radical the reception differed from Rocky IV. Flash forward decades later to December 2006, and Rocky Balboa is coming out. I know I was tuned in and ready for it. Darren, I know this is your first time watching it. Were you aware of any excitement back when this came out many moons ago at this point? Were you aware of a Rocky excitement? Was there any sort of sense on your part where you said, I should get around to watching those because they got another one coming out? Or was this just completely off your radar?
I think it wasn't really on my radar, but I attribute that to not having a Rocky friend. If you have a friend that is a Rocky person, then I probably would know all about it. But that you guys are my Rocky friends, so this isn't happening until 2022. So I do remember trailers for it. I remember, the little bit of the speech in one of the trailers and the clips and such. But that was it. I knew it was a movie that was coming out, but wasn't really interested. I mean, I wasn't going to start my Rocky journey with Rocky space, but with the full legal name. That wasn't the best place to start.
Tristan, when this was coming out, were you excited for Rocky Balboa? Was this something where you and your dad talked about going and catching it? Were you going to go to the theater? Did you go to the theater to go see Rocky Balboa?
No, this came out before I was a Rocky fan. This came out
Okay.
before I was exposed to it, where I had a Rocky friend. I met my Rocky friend in 2009.
Okay.
And that's when we binged all of them. Like, we watched 1 to Balboa, and we just did that in a weekend. And I was actually thinking, as I was watching it just yesterday, I was thinking, man, this would have been so cool to watch in 2006 after being exposed. Like, I wish I could have been exposed to the Rocky movies when they came out, had a couple decades to cool down, and then watch Balboa. Because I'm trying to imagine the impact that would have had, because this was before the trend of franchises coming back. Like, in the 2020s, everything's coming back. Every franchise is being rebooted. Again, I know that I know that things have been rebooted constantly, like for all time. But I'm saying that, like, the trend of revivals and old shows coming back, old movie crews coming back, a sequel 20 years later, and everything like that. That was a rare occurrence. This was Rocky Balboa was one of those rare occurrences. But now it's completely commonplace. And so it would have been really fun and interesting to be a Rocky fan in 2006 when this came out, because, like, I had an hour in between Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa.
Well, I can tell you, as somebody who was excited for it at the time, that I saw this with my brother. We were both, it was one of those things where the ad campaign was right. And I think that the ad campaign captured people and spoke in the right tone for everybody, that said, without saying this directly, can we all just forget Rocky 5 and just remember why we loved this to begin with? That is very much the tone that comes off of the trailers for this movie. And my brother and I, it was one of those things where, at the point that this is coming out, my wife is pregnant with our first child, who is going to be born in February of the following year. And so it's just a few months before that. I was training for something. So I was already in that mindset of, grinding it out and having a goal, and a Rocky movie coming along is just the right thing. I remember the weather at the time. I didn't see this before Christmas. I saw it after Christmas, and I saw it with my brother. And it was a gray day. It was a little bit cold. We're a little bit bundled up. And I remember going in and saying, it'll be fun, whatever. Sort of low expectations. We're going because we feel that sense of obligation to the franchise, sort of thing. And it was electric. It was a magnificent experience. And I have, since the first time I saw it, I have considered this an absolute love letter to the fans. It's a love letter to Rocky. It's a love letter to the fans of Rocky. It's Stallone's love letter to his career, to saying back out to everybody, this is the note that we go out on. Let's make it count. Let's make it wonderful. Now, Darren, this has been an accelerated journey for you. Not as accelerated as Tristan's was the first time. But we come to Rocky Balboa very quickly after the first time you've seen Rocky 2, 3, and 4. Do you detect a leap in directorial ability for Stallone from 4 to Balboa? Do you detect a different style of voice? Or do you see a director who is responding to the times, and instead of doing what he did with arguably Rocky 4 and being one of the tip of the spear for the MTV generation, he's instead in the position of making a movie that speaks to what's popular in the moment?
Okay, I'm going to break that down into one question.
Okay.
But yeah, no, there's definitely a shift. I mean, at its core, it's very easy to see the parallels between Rocky as a comeback king and Stallone as an aging movie star that is past, like, we talked about the parallels of Rocky 4, and Stallone was like king of that moment in 85. And now he's not. He's, I believe this is pre-Expendables, or it's right around that time too, where he's starting that kind of revival of his career. But, so there's that duality in the story. But even that aside, the parts I loved the best about this were just the little moments of Rocky being Rocky. Like, he's so kind and he's so cares about his community. And it's like, I want to go to a small restaurant named Adrian's, and the owner walks out in a dinner jacket that I know he only owns one, and that is it. And that is the dinner jacket. And, it's just, I love everything about, and none of that has anything to do with boxing. That's just what Rocky's doing now, and they don't have to explain, where'd the mega mansion go. He's still got a house. He's not home. He's got a business. Cause you got to still put money on the table. You can't just retire if you don't have a plan. So all that to say, that was, but tone, when you asked if there was a different directorial tone, the biggest thing I noticed, and maybe that's because, again, he's directing as well as primarily acting, which we all know is a crazy hat trick to pull off. The main fight at the end of the, quote unquote, end of the movie, felt like I was just watching a pay-per-view. And not in a super negative way, but it was like all of the shots and the angles and the crowd shot. Like, there was a little bit, maybe like 10% cinema, dribbled in there. But a lot of the shots were like, I'm just watching pay-per-view. And it was, and now that might have been not a crutch, but like, I could see him easily being like, okay, guys, do your thing and literally just film this in this location and we'll put it in the movie.
Well, I listened to the commentary of this movie years ago, and this was a very conscious decision, obviously, but it was a stylistic choice to do this. Like, they filmed it with HD cameras for the pay-per-view segment, like for the exhibition. Like, they used the same cameras that they use for pay-per-view. And it was, I loved how it was intermixed. Like, I love that segment because they use the same graphics, they use the same people who do the pay-per-view fights.
Like, Rocky's real. Like, this is totally legit.
Yes, it totally immerses you in that world. And it's very immersive. And I thought it was a great stylistic choice because it flips, like it kind of eases you back into a cinematic experience as it goes on, because like once you get through those first 2 rounds, the editing style changes, the graphics go away, they stop using the HD cameras, and we're back in cinematic mode using film cameras. And I loved how they had that progression where it's just like, boom, we're in Vegas, this is the pay-per-view fight. It's like you're watching pay-per-view at home, and like you just bought the fight, you got the beer, you got the corn nuts, and you're ready to go. You're ready to watch the fight, and you grew up watching Rocky Balboa in the ring, and it's just but then like you cut to the the Philadelphia shots, and it's film, and it's shot with a film camera. And so you're going back and forth. Like, it stays true to the style of what's going on and how you're seeing it. And I very much love that decision. I love that was Stallone's baby. That was Stallone's idea. He's like, let's shoot this like a pay-per-view fight for the first 2 rounds. And it's so, yeah.
And I think contributing to that as well is that this is supposedly the least choreographed Rocky fight, with Tarver and Stallone actually hitting each other. Now, I doubt that they were hitting to hurt, but it's something that adds to that because it heightens the realism for those shots, because when you are filming a choreographed thing, no matter how well you do it, you have to place the camera in a certain spot. Everybody has to hit a certain mark. I think it lends itself to a different sort of flow. But Tristan, getting to that, you talk about the handoff between the HD cameras and the more cinematic feel. In our discussion about Rocky IV, you referred to Stallone as an editor's director. Do you still feel he is that director here for Rocky Balboa? Is this an editor's director at work, or is this somebody who's a little bit more whatever else that would be, whatever the flip of that would be?
That's a really solid question, because this movie is a very distinctly different movie in terms of editing with the previous films. I mean, 16 years have gone by from Rocky V to Rocky Balboa. That's a huge amount of time when it comes to film. We've had huge advancements in cinematic technology, with CGI, with production methods, with makeup, with costuming. Everything has advanced like crazy from 1990 to 2006. And as I was watching the movie, when we get that, when we see the opening, and we see the moon, and all of a sudden we hear the rise of the music where it goes do 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 do, take it back. You know, like it immediately gets you in the feel of the franchise. But the editing is extremely different. That's the first thing to really let you know that this movie is different. This is not a throwback movie. This is not we're not trying to recreate a 70s movie. We're not trying to recreate an 80s movie. We're not trying to do any of that. It's a 2006 movie, and the editing is very 2006, because we get the as we get the shots of Philadelphia, we get the speed ramp up, like the film's going out of the gate real quick, and it flashes white, and just in a we use the footage of the cameraman stopping filming and turning it and clearing the film from the gate. Like, you're not supposed to use that footage, but in 2006, it was a very cool thing to do. And we get a lot of bloom lens flares. It's very soft, not soft focus, but just kind of hazy and foggy. And when they're outside, you don't get, I mean, they're not using an anamorphic lens, but like, you don't get a lens flare as we are used to it today. We get a bloom. And this is all very popular things in 2006. But to answer your question, I think it was Stallone rediscovering who he was as a director's editor in 2006, because I think it showed a lot of trust in the editor. I don't have his name in front of me. I meant to write it down.
You know what? I actually had pulled up the cinematographer because I was going to mention something funny about the photography, or rather his career. But the editor's name is Sean Albertson.
Sean Albertson, yes. It was. I think it was Stallone putting a lot of trust in Albertson and this particular style of 2006, because it's not a style that we've seen from Stallone before. And like Darren was talking about earlier, you know, this is Stallone at 60 years old. You know, like he's a filmmaker who, you're a different person when you're 60 than when you're 30 or when you're 40 or when you're 50. You know, this is someone who is refining himself in cinema. And so to answer your question, yes, I do believe that he is an a director's editor, an editor's director, whatever you want to phrase it. I really do believe that he is, because there was a lot of cinema, and we'll get to the cinematography, but there was a lot of cinematography techniques. There was a lot of editing techniques that were very apropos of the time. Do I think the macro version of editing could have been a little tighter? Yes. But the scene-to-scene cutting in between was spot on.
And what's interesting is this editor, and I think you can see something very, very consistent here. He works on Rambo, which is the next character to get a refresh after a disappointing 80s sequel a couple of years after this.
Which one? Did he work on Last Blood, or did he work on...
the fourth one.
The fourth one, okay.
That's just called Rambo. And this editor went on to do work on the Expendables 3, and he actually another fight movie in 2011, Warrior, which is Tom Hardy and Uncle Owen. That's how I always think of him.
That's a well-edited film too. Like this guy knows what he's doing. Yeah. So this is, I mean, you can tell that he really brought the times to the picture, and I think the cinematographer also brought Philadelphia to the screen in a way that we hadn't seen before.
Now, do you think that Darren? Because this is something where we've watched Stallone grow, we've watched the character grow. Do you think that this movie is a natural extension in the sense that if this Rocky movie were a new thing to come about, if this were basically, is this what Rocky 2 would have been if these were the popular things back then? Does this speak more to the fact that Stallone understands audience taste of the time?
Yeah, are you trying to say if this was the second movie after Rocky? So if Rocky comes out and then we jump.
I'm saying more if these styles had been what was popular in the 80s, is this what those Rocky movies would have looked like? Because Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4, they're 80s movies. And basically, is Stallone a chameleon of a director in terms of what he does?
I'd say to a point he is, but with this franchise, because as it's called Rocky, it is about Rocky. And we're talking about how much time is passing between, the last time he played this character. And I'm sure he still gets into the role, but he slips back into this character like a well-worn pair of boxing gloves. Like, you can tell he has so much heart and caring for, and we all know that Stallone is super protective of this character. Like, it is the one he identifies with the most, has, it's his production company. He has all the rights to it. But you feel that, because I don't see another producer or another director would give us so many of the little Rocky moments we get in this. Even the whole subplot of him, meeting Marie, the little girl that he walked by, in the previous film, which kind of was the Adrian stand-in of, not in a romantic way, but in a how Rocky treats women good way. And because he's a gentleman, and he, when it's right, it's right. And when it's wrong, it's wrong. And you stand up for what's right. Without that whole subplot, we wouldn't see that side of Rocky in this. And that's still important.
So as a question there, sort of spurred by that, in terms of a character who's being brought back, he's an older character in a different time. He's an old character in a modern world sort of thing. Follow up to you, Darren. Do you think that Rocky winds up feeling anachronistic, or do you think that this movie is Stallone making a statement in certain scenes saying the way that things have progressed is let's remind ourselves of the way we used to lionize our heroes? Is there a sense of nostalgia, not in a J.J. Abrams sense of I couldn't stop playing with my toys, but of looking back at a character and saying he had lessons to teach us, why did we forget them?
No, I definitely agree. I think, like I said, in the fact that it's also a actor who's coming back and saying hey, these stories I told before are just as relevant now. But in a lot of ways, Rocky's not bitter of the future. Rocky's not there's no Rocky trying to get online and having trouble with an email address and, oh, Rocky, you need a website or your restaurant's not going to do well with Open Table. No, there's none of that. It's because him running a restaurant, I could see him doing that in 85 or whatever. Just he'd be doing the exact same thing, the exact same way, because it's that old school charm, that old school way of doing what is right. And so I'm glad we didn't take him in that direction. He's not pushing against the times. He is the rock that doesn't change with the times.
Darren, I'm going to throw this to Tristan because I think you just helped me realize something that what truly elevates this and shows the brilliance of Stallone as a writer and director coming back to this character. Tristan, do you not agree with what just hit me like a thunderbolt while Darren was talking? In the hands of a studio hack or somebody else who isn't as invested in this character, we have a montage in this movie of his son trying to help him navigate Match.com, don't we? That's what happens if somebody
or
else
a
does
cell
this movie.
phone or something.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe not necessarily Match.com, but yes, we would have had that moment of it's. There's so many times when we see a franchise revival or a character come back from so long ago, where it's almost as if they were frozen in time and then unthawed. So like he was frozen in 1990, unthawed in 2006. That's not how this went down. He's been around. He's been alive. He's living a life. He's 60 years old. He's not 120. You know, it's so I think in a studio hack version, there would have been he would have made some sort of joke about a cell phone. He would have there would have been like, you know, like Steps would have come in and said like, oh, I design websites and like I can totally make a bitchin' website for Adrian.
We need to get your social media presence up, Rocky, for this fight. That would have been a thing.
100%. Yes. I think if it was done today, if it wasn't 2006, if it was 2020 or 2022, without a doubt.
Hashtag Rocky Balboa.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, well, that just got soul crushing.
Dirty.
Chills. My spine just locked up for a second as we walked through that. So that's really good. But we were talking about how it's been photographed. And Darren, it's photographed by a gentleman named Clark Mathis. Clark Mathis, I think, does a great job with this film. Tristan, to your point, he photographs Philadelphia very well. It's a disgusting city that should be wiped off the map, but he makes it look as good as it can. And we go
at KesselJunkie.com.
Are you just sad they took the statue down, John?
No,
is that what it is?
You know what? I'll take on the whole city of Philadelphia, and I won't even have to break a sweat. Okay, that's how I stand on that one. But Clark Mathis, he doesn't direct. He's photographer for movies like Norbit and Meet Dave and Gotta Kick It Up for the Disney Channel. And so Rocky Balboa seems to stand out in his filmography in a lot of ways. Do you think that this is an example of a very competent cinematographer elevated by the opportunity to work with a passionate director? Like, do you think that the visual product here is more a reflection even of Stallone than it is of the person who's photographing? It's a director who knows what he wants and says, this is specifically what we're going to get.
I mean, that would be my insight. I mean, this is a wild guess. I wasn't there on the set. I don't know the words, Stallone gave him, but it feels like the kind of movies where, there was a problem with the director and the second unit guy gets handed like the reins and he's like, okay, well, here's your parameters. Make the city look like this. And then they just do it. And so that's kind of the vibe I'm getting is that, yeah, Stallone knows what he wants. He knows because he's got enough stuff to worry about. Like I was trying to figure out like what was the thing that Stallone had to really focus on. Again, directing a movie that you're the lead actor in. We all know the challenges of that, and so we talked about the pay-per-view part where he's like, you guys know what to do. Just do your thing and we'll record it. I'm guessing it was more on focusing on the intimate little moments of Rocky and the personality and the character. But I could totally see him for the cinematography being like, hey, this is what I want it to look like. You know what you're doing. I'm going to let you. So being a little more hands off and letting that shine. So it's kind of the answer is yes to both counts. Yes, he knows what he wants, but he's also letting the cinematographer have a nice playground to play in. That's not, Norbit or Disney movie, whatever. Again, this is all speculation. Haven't heard a special commentary confirming that, but that's the vibe I'm getting.
Tristan, anything to add or?
Well, I do want to say that, it's sometimes people in the movie industry, they get into a pigeonhole where they're like, oh, like you're great at shooting goofy comedies, so that's what you should do, and that's what you're going to do. Like if somebody's creating a stupid comedy, they're like, oh, the guy who shot Norbit, he's really great at what he does. And even though Norbit was a crappy movie, it was photographed well. Like it's one of those things where you can be a great cinematographer with crappy source material. I mean, I know this isn't a 1-to-1 with what I'm trying to say, but like Janusz Kaminski shot a Vanilla Ice film. We all, that's different because it's like we're all got to get our start somewhere, but you can have a crappy movie that's photographed well. And I think this is one of those situations where you go beyond the subject matter, where you would hope that people in an industry that understands that it takes a million moving parts to make a movie, that even if a movie bombs or isn't well regarded, there are certain things that are really good about it. Like, oh, Star Trek Beyond didn't make a lot of money, but holy crap, that makeup design was amazing. Like things like that. One thing
Which
that
is why
really
it should have won, Tristan.
I know. I know. It's completely robbed at the Oscars.
Yes,
completely
it was.
robbed.
Yes, yeah. Listen, there are so many makeup. I'll never understand the makeup category at the Oscars. Let's just leave it at that. I'll never understand it because there are so many ones where it just completely blows my mind how it goes. And I understand it's a fine art and those sorts of things, but okay, sorry. Let's climb out of that rabbit hole.
One thing I wanted to talk about with this cinematography is the use of distance. I think that this movie really illustrates and articulates the distance between characters. Out of all the movies, out of the entire franchise, we see these characters separate from each other until key moments where we have we have Rocky and Marie. When I'm getting that character's name right, Marie, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when he's trying to convince her that she should take the hostess job, like they're starting to walk together and they're side by side, but then when they start to have the conversation, he keeps walking, but she steps away. And so he's in the street, she's on the sidewalk. And the camera shows that distance. There's very few times when we see characters side by side. There's very rarely a two-shot, which is very fascinating from a picture like this, especially when you look at the previous entries. Especially we see that distance between Rocky and his son. There's a few moments where like he'll step in and for a hug, saying like, "Hey, you want to come in? Is everything okay?" Because like he's not purposefully keeping his distance. It's more of a metaphorical distance that we're seeing. And then we get into it like with Marie and Rocky in the van together when she's encouraging him. When she's like, "No, you go do it. You still have things to do. Your heart doesn't age. Like you move forward." And they're close together in a van. And there's even that moment when Rocky makes a little bit of an ass of himself with like when he first sees Steps, and like he's kind of nervous, like he doesn't know if he wants to meet Steps and everything like that. But then he changes his mind, comes back. He doesn't move over to Steps and to Marie. He stays where he is and puts the card on the stoop. On the steps, yeah, like yeah. And another director would have like made Rocky go in, shake his hand, and be all chummy with him. That's not Rock. And And so this movie is very much about the distance between people. I mean, like, even with Paulie, when you see Rocky and Paulie, they're never close to each other. Like, when they're going through the anniversary walk of Adrian's death, they're very rarely in a two-shot. They're never shoulder to shoulder. They're never touching. They're never close. Like, when he goes off to the ice skating rink, Paulie's by the car. They're screaming their conversations to each other. When they're in the meat locker, they're separate. Paulie never gets up to comfort Rock. He never goes up and like gets close. Like, they keep that distance, that uncomfortable distance. And even at the restaurant, Paulie's at the bar, Rock's a few steps down. And it's not until these people are literally in his corner that we see them close and touching and celebrating. And that is fantastic filmmaking. That is showing character arc through visual language. And you got to give credit to the director. You got to give credit to the actors and the cinematographer. And I just wanted to talk about that bit tonight.
And I'm glad that you did, because I'll throw in just as a final 2 cents from my perspective. I think that this is one of the 2 most visually interesting Rocky films that exists, and the other one is the first one. That's the highest praise I think I can possibly give the film. Is I look at this, and I even just look at the scene. I made reference to it when we opened up, where he's talking to his son, and he talks about life's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, what you can take and keep moving forward, because that's how winning is done. If you just look at that, and the way the color of his jacket stands out from everything else around him that's much more drab, and you see Rocky as this, even though the world around him has lost a lot of its color, has that bloom from the light that you say, like everything's a little washed out. But Rocky, I hate using this word, but Rocky pops in that jacket. Rocky is very obviously, like, you can put that on mute. Right, yes. But you can put that scene on mute and look at it and visually get instantly, Rocky has passion. Rocky is different than the world around him. Rocky has the power of just faith and belief. And just looking at that, I think is beautiful. I think it looks wonderful.
Even if you look at where Steps and Marie are living, like, they have a nice little row house, with a busted light, but then right next to it, 2 of the row houses are burned out. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It is such a metaphor for people who are good and kind and talented and interesting in a bad situation.
Yes.
And there's so many people who are suffocated by their surroundings. And if they just had a little bit of love, a little bit of help, a little bit of support, they could grow and flower. And that's what Rocky is doing for them. And that's why we see how it's beautiful location scouting.
Yes.
That is great production design, and it's a visual metaphor. And this movie is filled with them.
Absolutely.
We never even go into the house. It's all exterior, but we get so much story just from that. I wanted to echo what you were saying, Tristan, about the distances with the characters, but the way I also saw it was the distance from the camera to the characters was also really interesting. And yeah, that also culminates with in the corner, and they're like, we're literally on top of each other. But probably it might even be my favorite shot of the movie is when we're in the meat packing plant, when Paulie gets fired, and we're so far from him. He's like at the other end of this hall, and so you feel like this, not a disconnect, but like you're an observer to this to this personal moment that is shameful, that you almost want to turn away, and exactly, there's no audio, there's no dialogue, and you know exactly what's happening. He's getting his papers.
You know what it's very reminiscent of is a specific moment in Taxi Driver when he's getting rejected and he's on the payphone and he's getting rejected, and the camera turns away from Travis, because the film shows all of this terrible stuff, but the thing it can't show us is how much he's in pain. And that scene with Paulie is very much, we do, like you're saying, we have that distance, and it makes us feel helpless, because this is the one moment where we do want to go and give Paulie a hug and say, oh, you are a human being after all. I'm so sorry this is happening to you, but the film is reminding us there's nothing you can do to help him. It plays just in a very specific way with the audience, and it, in that moment, gives you that emotional connection you've been looking for with Paulie, to see him, to, as they say in Avatar, I see you, Paulie. And it's one of those things where I think it just speaks to, what you were saying before, Tristan, where we can look at the filmography of the director of photography and say, oh gosh, Norbit, meet Dave, blah, blah, blah. But the guy gets the right material and the right director behind him, and I think he steps forward, and this is something he can forever be proud of. If this is the only film he's ever known for, it's one hell of a film to be known for.
Just a couple of scenes before, they totally teed it up by him, painting, spending all of his time there, saying, this is, like Rocky remembers saying, if you spend a lot of time in one place, you become that place. This is all I got. And then 2 scenes later, he gets his papers. You're like, oh God, what a gut punch.
And that speaks to, again, the Rocky films have always talked about the times that they're in, and just that idea of the fact that there's no corporate loyalty anymore. Generations before us, you worked for the same company for 30, 35 years, and you might switch divisions and stuff like that, but you got your pension at the end of the 30, you got your gold watch. It might not have been the most exciting job in the world, but you had the sense that the people you worked for, like you're saying, Tristan, once you were there long enough, okay, we're on this journey together. The company and you were basically married until the end. And that's not the world that this Rocky inhabits anymore. That's not the world that the 3 of us inhabit, or anybody listening inhabits anymore. There's no sense of that anymore. It's a sense of, well, either one of us can call it quits at any time, sort of thing. And it's an unsettling thing. I think that Paulie's whole arc, that specific piece of it, speaks to that unsettled nature that we all have, no matter how comfortable or successful we are in our careers. There's always that little thing in the back of our mind that's wondering, well, am I just, one bad quarter away from something going wrong with where I am?
When the following scene where he's like, oh, Rocky, I retired. And Rocky's like, I don't remember people getting chunks of meat for retiring. Like, they get gold. Like, he knows, like, you were fired, you were let go. But I also love the callback all the way to Rocky 2, 3. But where the fact that where Paulie says, like, I just need a seat. Like, whereas remember in that movie where he was like, you could have just asked me for a job, but he wasn't going to. Like, Paulie's progressed from there.
Right. Now, in terms of progress, in terms of callbacks, all of those sorts of things, I want to make sure that we talk about somebody else who came back, aside from Burt Young and aside from Sylvester Stallone, but Tony Burton coming back as Duke and giving what I think is one of the finest moments in any Rocky film. I remember watching his scene where he's talking to Rocky about training and talking about, and I'm not going to try to quote it word for word, but he's just talking about, he's like, your knees are shot, your hips are no good, don't have the stamina of this kid, you're never going to be as strong as you were, but we can train up your strength, and you're just going to demolish him. And he does that head twitch thing, you hear the crack, and he's like, fine, we're not going to finesse him this time, you're just going to beat the living snot out of him. It's like Duke gets, who would think that after Rocky 4 you'd get something as stirring as, now you know what you got to do. Now go out there and do it. Do it. Like, it's completely, energy-wise, completely opposite. But it's just as effective Tony Burton, what a gem. What an absolute gem. And thank goodness that Stallone brought him back into the mix for this one.
I absolutely love Duke, and I've said it every single time that he's gotten more screen time on this podcast about how much I love Duke, and I'm so glad that he was brought back for Rocky Balboa. And one thing, it's just it added a touch, just a touch, a sprinkle of realism to the movie, where he talks about all the disadvantages. He said he's like, you got calcification in your knees, you got arthritis in your neck. Like we can't do any kind of like intense running training because your knees are shot. We can't. You're not going to be as fast as this guy. That's obvious. So when you hit him, it's going to be like a freight train. It's like, that's the thing. Is like, that's what we can hold on to. You're 60 years old, but you can still hit like a hammer, and that's what really. That's the thing that really kind of helped Rocky throughout his entire career. He's small. He's, there's so, like, you look at Clubber Lang, you look at Drago, hell, even Apollo was, who I've said was a freaking monster with his muscle tone. They're so much bigger than Sylvester Stallone, but because he can take a hit and because he has a freight train for a punch, that's what gets him forward. Keep moving forward.
Yes. Just keep moving. And it's, Darren, we're sitting here with the love letter to Duke, and I know you're on board with it too. Is there a performance outside of the ones that we've spoken about here? Is there anybody that jumps forward to you? Like, and I always butcher his last name, I apologize, Milo Ventimiglia, I think is how you pronounce it. He was in Gilmore Girls. That's all I know.
No, I'm from.
Yeah, well, he was also in, was it This Is Us or Million Little Pieces or Million This Is Us Pieces or one of those sad plinky guitar shows on either NBC or ABC, one of the two of them. And the one with Mandy Moore, he was in that one. So are there any other performances that jumped out at you, Darren?
I mean, yeah, we hit the major ones. But no, Milo playing Rocky Balboa Jr. or Robert Balboa Jr., his son, it was an interesting role because in a way you almost don't need it. Like it feels like a very side-ish story. We get a lot more time invested in Marie and her arc. And she's just like, oh, I happened to walk by this person I knew as a kid, but it's still needed because it's a very realistic portrayal. It's it's not hunky dory. Oh yeah, we're in business together and I update your social media and all this stuff or whatever it is. It's not that.
Yeah.
But it's still, we get the great speech. We get, him. I mean, honestly, man, the moment towards the end where he's like, I just want to be with you, Dad. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like that's every parent's dream, is that when their kid is grown, they want to at least spend a little bit of time with you and on their own accord, not like because you have money or because you own the house still or whatever. But, and again, just, Sylvester Stallone just knows these moments and these because again, like that's exactly how I'd expect Rocky to react. He's not like, you left your job, I didn't mean that. Like, now what are you gonna do for work? He's like, it's gonna be okay. He's like, I literally told you to do this. Like, if it's not your place, don't stay there. And and then he's with him. He's in the corner, and he's also afraid, because he's like, I don't want my dad to, this be the day my dad dies, because that's a very real possibility with this fight. We're getting echoes of Apollo Creed's fight and just where that was going. And so, I say it almost wasn't needed. I definitely enjoyed it in there. It was just one of these many threads of showing the sides of Rocky, and that's his family side, and we get a lot of dose of family side with Paulie for sure. But I think he did a great job in portraying that. It's really everyone who's in his corner. Like that's the story, is all these threads, and that's where they coalesce is in that corner or in the ringside seats.
Final question for both of you before we get to our ratings. Final question. Am I the only one who got a little choked up as the inset rolled on the credits of people running up the steps and realized that credit sequence was all about giving a wink and blowing a kiss to the fans and saying everybody wants to do this and has ever since the first film? Am I the only one that was really touched by that?
Wasn't misty or anything like that. I was grinning like an idiot the first time I saw it. And in the commentary, I don't know how much I believe this, but in the commentary they said that they didn't schedule anything, they didn't hire anybody, they didn't bring anybody in. They just set up shop there with a camera and a crew because everybody just goes and does that. Like they just picked a day to go film that. And since everybody goes and does that, they just filmed it. They just filmed it and then put it in a...
Completely believe it. Because especially if I saw a camera crew there, I'd be like, yeah. I want to do it. I want to do it. And like show somebody. Like I still go up normal steps. If there's more than 5 steps, you run up all of the steps and you do the Rocky jump up at the top of it. I mean, it's crazy. I remember one of the first Tough Mudders I did. That I got to the top of one of the obstacles and I turned around and I did the Rocky jumping up and down with my fists in the air because it was like, that's just what you do. It's just what you do. Or you stand at the top of it and you shout Drago at the top of your lungs.
I think there's a grain of truth, like Tristan was saying. I do believe that does happen every day, but I could also see the camera crew being there and there's one person like down at the bottom of the stairs who's like, hey everybody, who wants to run up? And like there's obviously some coaching. It's not just we hid in the bushes and got our camera out and everyone just happened to do this exactly what we wanted. Like no one believes that.
Yeah. The final shot where they're all still together and they all are in line. We're just like, okay, that just doesn't happen. You can't convince people to stay around.
Life is not a musical. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. But it does speak to what's
nice.
magical.
It was definitely a nod to, hey, you guys kept this franchise heart beating through decades of no film. Like that's nothing to sneeze at. And the movie was still successful. We haven't talked box office at all.
The movie was ridiculously successful. Yeah. It cost $24 million to make, and it made just about $156 million. That's a successful film.
Yeah. That's really successful.
And it really speaks to the power of the character, but also the power of word of mouth. No matter how much marketing you put into something, you have to have the first few audiences come out and say, you got to go see this, guys. You got to go see this. Because I remember coming out and going to all of my friends. I was like, no, you got to go see it. You got to go see it. You got to see Rocky Balboa. Go see it in the theater. Because it's that whole thing of, we always use this one, all of us do. No, go see it. We want to send a signal that we want more things like this. And then it backfires completely and Hollywood gets completely wrapped up in the reboot. And eventually we sit there saying, no more reboots, please, for the love of God, stop this. But it was all our own fault because we made Rocky Balboa successful. So double-edged sword, I guess. So here we are. This is the final entry in our House of Stallone examination. Here we are with Rocky Balboa. Darren, I will throw it to you last. Tristan, because this is your first time seeing it. Tristan, here we are with Rocky Balboa. Final entry. Last Rocky movie in the sense that he's the title character. What do you rate Rocky Balboa?
This is a hard one because if you asked me last week what I'd rate this, I'd say 5 stars. I'd be like, this is amazing. This is great. This is one of the best in the franchise. This is great visual language, great editing for the time, fantastic performance, great writing, great speeches, the best speeches out of the entire franchise. Hands down, the best speeches in the entire franchise. That moment when he gets hit, everything goes to black and white in the ring, and he's like, you hear the He's like, what did you say to the kid? It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. I woke up to that. I literally put that in my alarm clock for a year in order to get out of bed. I love this movie. I truly love this movie. But after watching this yesterday and seeing, the entire franchise again and seeing the highs and the lows, one thing really bothered me is that one thing that I really liked is that it went against the formula. Darren, I thought about you when I watched it because this goes against the normal formula of what we got with the other films. And in a good way, unlike Rocky V, but with it goes against the formula. But because of that, the first two acts are very slow. They are very slow. We don't get to real boxing until like the last 10 minutes of the movie. And that's a hard thing to do for a Rocky film. That's a really hard thing to do. And so I want to say 4 stars because it's so great. Maybe after this conversation, I think I'm leaning to 4.5 stars because I think I'm going to take off a half star for a really slow first act. That's my final answer, 4.5 stars.
All right. And Darren, like I said, you're going to go last because it's your first time with it. And Tristan, I understand what you're saying, but I wholeheartedly reject it because I think that this scores on every emotional level, and Rocky is an emotional franchise. And I think it's completely fair to look at something and say, there might be technical things I have an issue with, but this movie is about delivering a feeling. This is about speaking to my heart, not my brain. And so I'm going to give it a 5 because this is a movie where, much like the first one, I get choked up during it. I feel great at the end of it. And I feel like it's saying something that I can understand, apply, and evangelize out to the world of you're never too old. You're never too broken down. You're never hopeless. You are always, because this entire journey, Rocky, he's not too old. He's not hopeless. Paulie, hey, you lost your job. You know what? It doesn't matter. You can still find a way forward in this world. His son, you can find your identity. You can find out who you are, and don't let anybody else tell you what it is. Marie, keep believing. Somebody will be there. Somebody will listen to you. No matter what it is, somebody will at least listen to you and recognize you and value you as a person. And even if it's just one guy, that's what matters. One person can make a difference to somebody else. And I think it's wonderful. And so for that reason, I give it 5 stars. I love Rocky Balboa as much as I love the first film. And Darren, this is your first viewing of Rocky Balboa. Take us out strong, buddy. What did you think of it?
Yeah, no, I get what Tristan's saying about the slowness. If this was like made in the era of Rocky V, it would completely not work because it's too close. But as a 17-ish years later, in this not reboot, but just coming back to the revival, I think I gave it a pass just because I didn't know what to expect. I'm coming into this, and honestly, it won a lot of points having the Rocky music playing literally within seconds of starting. That is an important factor in Darren's review, and they got it in right there at the gate. So, but yeah, no, we hadn't talked about the when Rocky's son talks about the shadow and living in Rocky's shadow, and like it feels like so much has happened in the movie beyond that because it's so kind of towards the beginning. But that is also an amazing part where, yeah, we all know, maybe not our own fathers, but we know people that we feel we're kind of in the shadow of, and that is part of life. But yeah, this was a great movie. This was a lot of fun. It was so fun to see Stallone go back to the Rocky role. You, again, like I said before, you can tell He has such passion for this character. No one else can be there. I mean, you never say never in Hollywood, but I could not see anyone else being like, oh, let's make another Rocky and do with someone different. Like, no, do something like Creed. Like, you're the same bones, but you're continuing the story. That is the way to go, because no one is going to be Rocky but Sylvester Stallone. In the Genesis in the 70s, burned bright through the 80s, into the into the aughts. What a character. That's the most impressive thing, I think, looking back at all these films we've watched. It's a really solid franchise, like amazingly consistent. Usually, I mean, even more consistent, I'd say, than like Star Trek or some other franchises. Like
Oh, yes.
that is very difficult to pull off. Now, I'm sure it helps that a lot of these are directed by the same director. That helps always. But so I'm going to give Rocky Balboa a solid 4. It's a really good movie. I will definitely be watching it again. It's hard to give a 5, just because not even that there's anything wrong with it. I'm still in that early phase of being a Rocky person. Like so there's still that little hint of like, I'm not a boxing person. That's not my gig. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy this movie. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy this character. But but I feel like I'm becoming that Rocky friend now. I'm going to find a friend. We should all find a friend who hasn't seen Rocky and sit him down and be like, okay, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, Balboa, and go straight through like that. So yeah, I give Rocky Balboa a solid 4.
Well, I think those are good marks all around. And I am now excited as we step out of the house of Stallone and we enter on our next journey, which is going to be real interesting, folks. I promise you this is going to be one heck of a joyride, where we are going to enter the house of Miller, George Miller in specific, as we look at his work specifically with the Mad Max franchise, starting with 1979's Mad Max.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.